Right. Welcome everyone to another one of HELIG's webinars, this time presented by Carmen Nel from the University of the Free State. Carmen is going to talk to us about web content in a webinar, and hopefully this will inspire you to consider doing a webinar or online discussion for HELIG, perhaps or joining us in the HELIG Journal Club, which is very similar to a webinar. Carmen's presented this webinar to the Free State HELIG group, and then as a webinar to the KZN HELIG group as well. But because the content is so interesting and Carmen's a great presenter, we thought Carmen could share this with a wider group. So Carmen, I'm going to hand over to you. I will mute myself and stop this and stop the screening, the sharing of this.
Thanks, Ingrid. I just want to put my document back on. There we go. Okay, so looking at content development for webinars, what is a webinar? So very, very obviously in your face, like webinar is a live event or a meeting as we are doing now. And it makes use of all sorts of features like audio and video and all sorts of interactive elements to communicate with a large number of people who are not necessarily all situated in the same building, in the same province, in the same country. Then there are also obviously the interactive features that the audience can use. If they want to ask questions, as you've pointed out, they can type their questions in the chat bar. And there's normally a question and answer session at the end to answer the viewer questions. So why would we want to hold a webinar? Well, it's the most obvious part of it is the traveling aspect, I would think. And they say webinars are more than just a solution for saving time and effort. You don't have to get everybody together in one place for a meeting or to get attention for some product or cause. And it's more effective to target your audience, whether inside or outside of the company, as we're doing now. We're speaking to each other nationally. And then, as you're also doing, to record this. And of course, the biggest one of this is you may even get to be in front of a camera. Haven't you always dreamed of being in front of a camera? So there's your movie time. So what do we need to do to produce a successful webinar? I can't stress planning enough. You need to plan ahead. How long will it take for you to get all of your resources together? You can't do this at 99. You need to be organized. Who's going to present and who's going to be the support during your webinar? So I'm asking you please not to annihilate me. I'm alone at the moment. Things are rather chaotic here, but I think I've got this. And then you need to think of where you're going to get your information. What kind of resources are you going to need, and how quick or how long is it going to take you to get it all together? All right, you need to schedule to find out when the webinar will reach the most people and when not. So as far as planning goes, it's important, have a written script. Your resources, ensure that they're in order, are they together? And schedule your program with enough time for each segment. Then the big part of this is using the right technology. There's a variety of tools you can use to create a webinar. So you want to impress people with your webinar. Use professional tools so you don't look like the monkey. And maybe you need to consult somebody for outside help. But that's why there's professionals, isn't it? I had our IT guy help me yesterday set this webinar up to make sure everything was working on my laptop. So you need to look at small little things. You know, the technological glitch. They always say Murphy's Law. I don't know who Murphy was, but I'm sure he was a bugger. So also then the most important part then of your webinar is making sure you have compelling content. You want to keep everybody's attention. And best webinars feature content that clearly communicates your message, the message you want to get across. And then each webinar participant should leave with a clear message. You want to make sure that what you've told them has sunk in. You want to make sure your content has been able to grip them. But like I said, it's easier said than done. I know, I've been there. You need to interact with your audience. So if anybody wants to interact, please feel free. Webinar participants take in more when they like to ask questions and participate in the webinar. You don't want it to be one-sided. We can allow type chat, as we have done here. You could provide participants with audio and video connections. Okay, there are different ways of doing webinars. And you don't want to get your audience with too much content as well. So remember to keep it, I always think the golden rule is keep it simple. Okay. You can create interactive training materials that allow participants to answer questions and receive results on their training efforts. I see Ingrid has just said the video is not enabled because of bandwidth issues. Thanks, Ingrid. Then still interacting with your audience. Webinar participants gain more when they're allowed to ask questions and actively participate. The point is, audience must not remain passive. They must participate. And it would be wow if you could get them out of their chairs, although not literally, and take part in the webinar. It has to be interactive again, I stress. So how will you know you've made your points? By asking for feedback, actually, and then acting on it. So there's multiple avenues, like the slide shows you. You can gain feedback by email, forums, SMS, WhatsApp, audio, visual conversations, social media. Doesn't matter how you get the message, be sure to listen to what your audience wants you to hear, what they are telling you. So what shouldn't go in a webinar? Time wasters. Part of the benefit of a webinar is saving as much time as possible, so no time wasters. You don't have to travel, you don't have to dress somebody up in a strange convention hall or arena. You don't even have to leave your office depending on what your office arrangement is. When you've completed your plan, you need to analyze it and make sure every part of the plan accomplishes something important. And if it doesn't do what you want to do, lose it, which includes the graphics and the pictures. Like I said, we don't want to go too much, keep it simple. Also, boring materials. This might be where one of my older relatives would start bemoaning the attention spans of today's youth. Exhausting. But there is something to be said for attention-grabbing material. If the entirety of your webinar consists of a 2-hour lecture with a single camera, you're probably going to lose the attention of your audience at some point. Take a look at your materials and make sure they can hold the interest of your webinar participants. You don't need to include strobe lights and loud music every 15 seconds, but you must ensure that your audience is drawn to your presentation and willing to participate. Then also what shouldn't go in a webinar is materials not meant for the audience. One reason webinars are effective is that they help you reach the audience you want to reach clearly and effectively. More than anything else, webinars help you target a specific audience and communicate directly to that audience with a concise, effective message. With this in mind, don't include materials that don't apply to the audience. So what goes into producing a successful webinar? Why webinars work? Okay, this is all part of producing a successful webinar. You have direct contact with your audience, and because large gatherings can lose a lot of communication potential. If you're in a crowd, you can be distracted by somebody around you, so you've got direct contact with your audience. It's hard for one person to speak up and ask a question, and more often than not, you just end up being a passive listener. So this allows you to ask individual questions. A webinar allows you to establish direct connection with webinar participants, giving them a conduit in which to ask questions and to provide commentary. Even with numerous participants, each participant gets a more personal connection. So it's almost like one-on-one. It allows you to access your audience across time and space, like I've said. Regular in-person or live meetings can provide information to those who can actually attend the session, but if you're not able to, what are you going to do? If you can't attend, you lose out. So this allows you direct contact. Okay, and webinars educate those in attendance for the live session and provide access for later viewing. That's why we're recording. Okay, and also there's so many great tools you can make use of. Slide presentations, but don't feel limited to static text and images. You can include audio and video presentations in your webinar to communicate your message. Those materials can fuel interactive discussions and communication. It's just the tool that you're using is to be the best tool to communicate your content. Make sure you present your content in the best possible light. Then you need to analyze your audience. Don't psychoanalyze those attending a webinar unless you're conducting the world's largest group therapy session. Okay, that could be frustrating. Just like any other presentation, you have to know who you are presenting and why you're presenting to them. And what they need to get out of a presentation. Ingrid says her first HELIG webinar was with an international speaker. So yes, it's across time and space. Okay, so and by analyzing your audience, you're gathering together a sizable amount of people and using their time and attention to accomplish what? So don't psychoanalyze, but know who you're presenting to and why. Then also, again, choose the best tools available. Remember, depending on where you're located and how many people are involved, you need to consider the following. I'm not going to read that whole list to you, but I am going to explain to you a bit. Once you know what you want to accomplish with your webinar, the next step involves choosing the right tools. They say it's a little bit more complicated than going to the junk drawer in your kitchen for that screwdriver. Who of us do not have a drawer like that in our house? And you can choose from a wide variety of options to deliver the webinar. You can add interactive elements and a larger crowd, and you're not going to need, and obviously you're going to need some experts on your side. Decide that you want to store the webinar somewhere online for future use, and you need experts, and your need for experts has just increased. Make sure you have the proper tools and infrastructure in place to handle these needs before you get started. It's much more relaxing when you know everything is in place and you don't have to go and stress about anything on the day that the actual webinar draws near. Okay. So what do you do to make your webinar known? Get social, spread the word. There's various ways of communicating your message. HELIG sent an email on the listserv. Social media helps you identify those interested in your webinar through networks of friends and professionals. So maybe your Liasa province has a Facebook page. Take a look at your webinar promotion strategy. Start off with email blasts to your customers or your clients and your prospective mailing lists. Include the option for those recipients to share the messages with others. So share, get the message out there. Okay, looking at that list, post your event on LinkedIn, social media, like I said, and your Facebook page. Add registration confirmation emails as an option so you know how many people are going to attend, and then allow them to post on about your webinar on Twitter and their own Facebook pages. Set up a Twitter hashtag. As I've said before, I think Ingrid is the queen of Twitter. She always lives it up at a Liasa meeting, at a Liasa conference. When you've moved past the promotion stage, social media can be used to reinforce the message that you're sending across. Okay. So also provide a channel afterwards, maybe a discussion forum or a blog for participants to then exchange ideas and notes on what they've learned. Now getting to the main crux of a webinar, which is the content. What does your content need to look like? Keep it compelling. No matter how you present your webinar, keep it compelling. The message should mean something, and it should hopefully compel your audience to do something. Okay, you need to make your content interesting and worth the time your audience is spending or investing on attending this webinar. Make sure that the information is up to date. So you could probably crucify me at the top of the bar. I see mine says content development for webinars November 2017. This is the same webinar I presented in November, and I neglected to change the title. So make sure your information is current. Okay, make sure you use up-to-date information, keep it lively, keep it informational, and don't be afraid to be a little entertaining. Then I wouldn't recommend writing the book, but at least write handouts so that you can mail them afterwards or before the presentation for those who'd like to make notes. PDFs, Word documents, like I said, summary or notes as an overview of your presentation. Put the presentation up for repeated downloads if necessary. So there you go. Where do you put them up? YouTube. What's the other one on LinkedIn? SlideShare. So you could put these up everywhere where you can think of if you want to share your message that widely. Then think of the next speaker. It gets a bit boring if you have to listen to the same voice the whole time, so I'm very sorry for all of you listening. But have more than one presenter involved, okay? And then also maybe somebody with more experience that can maybe put in some interesting extra information. Like I said, you don't want to listen to one person the whole time. Have one person act as a host, which is now in this case Ingrid, and then have that host pass a presentation to other speakers and look at it again. Ingrid says upload it to various platforms, including Liasa. Looking at the multimedia you could use in a presentation like this. Animations, computer-generated media, which might be a sound clip or a movie clip. You can use multimedia to dive deeply into a complex product and then show individual sections of it in action. We've lately been stuck into Office Mix over here at the UFS library. So we've now been asked to do Office Mix videos. So maybe you can incorporate those. Office Mix is an extension found in PowerPoint. Just make sure beforehand that everything from your side runs smoothly. Ingrid, like I said, Office Mix video. We are using Office Mix videos at the moment with our PowerPoints because we're making training videos. Yes, it is an extension of PowerPoint. Yes, that would be interesting to know. Does anybody else use Office Mix? If you are, just drop us a message there. We've only recently started using it, but it seems to be helping. So how do you execute this perfect webinar? Practice, 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 practice. Practice makes perfect. Rehearse it. Then make sure on the day everybody is there that is needed. The tech guy, your second speaker. Have a script and stick to it. Test drive the webinar. I think I've done that by now, November last year. Have a backup plan. I don't know about you guys, but our network's been up and down lately. So there's all of these things you need to look out for. Engage the audience. So thanks to open source software, you're able to host your video conferences or your webinars for free. There are various ones. I'm just going to name a couple of them. Liasa uses Big Blue Button. We are now using Adobe Connect. And then there are a couple of others. Just when I Googled, this is what I found. Apache Open Meetings. There's Big Blue Button. Jitsi. mConf. Google Hangouts. mConf is based on Big Blue Button and can be used on mobile devices as well. So there's at your phones or whatever. Then there's Google Hangouts. I'm just going to give you a short thing on Google Hangouts. We saw it some time back and we decided to try it. Now, shamingly enough, we haven't quite tried it yet. So it would be interesting if you do something like this to maybe tell us how it went for you, what worked, what didn't work. So there is some feedback you could provide. So what is Google Hangouts, or what do you need for Google Hangouts? And like Jeremiah says, Google Hangouts seems to be popular. So for Google Hangouts, firstly, you need a Google account. Create one especially for the purpose of your webinar, so you don't have your inbox flooded of your private email or your work email. Just create one for the webinar. And if you want to go into detail on Google, there's Google Forms. If you want to, if everybody registers for your webinar, you can create a form and instantly email them a link so they can complete a survey to say how they found it. They can give feedback. So if you want to go a bit deeper into Google, you can do all of these things there. Create one for the purpose of the webinar. There's no limit to attendees, although it does seem to be popular for smaller meetings, and there's no annoying ads. I don't know if any of you get as irritated as I have when these ads jump up across your screen. So how do you use Google Hangouts? Step one, you need to create a Hangout on air. You can do that from your Google Plus page. Select Hangouts, create an event, which is the webinar you want to present, and then invite these participants via email. Instantly, you now have that email database, and when you do that questionnaire through Google Forms, you can send everybody in your address list the link, and they can click on this and complete the form, and your feedback is returned to you instantly. Okay. Then, second step, customize your webinar, maybe with trailers and applications. So like they say, activate two very important apps, question and answer and showcase. What question and answer does is allows you to accept questions posted by the audience, and when you've answered them, it marks it done, so you're not lost. Okay. Then showcases allow you to send the articles, website links, products, and other online content to your audience. Like I said, you've now built yourself a database by sending an invite via your Google account. Step 3, the most important part. Without an audience, there is no webinar. So how do you invite them? Email, ads on your social media, allow people to invite other people. And when you've got all of this, you broadcast your webinar. Okay. So for Google Hangouts, you'd have a slideshow presentation to show your audience as you speak, as I'm showing you my slides now. The screen share button allows you to share your screen with your audience. And you start your broadcast with the broadcast button. And when this is over, you can edit it or download your recording onto YouTube. There you go. Congratulations. Guess what? You've managed to do a webinar. And it's out there. Okay, here's a short summary, a cheat sheet you could use when organizing this. Invitations, send it in advance. 2 weeks. But if you send it too far in advance, you're going to forget. Your audience is going to forget. Okay. Send it 2 weeks, maybe a reminder afterwards. Use a simple form for registration. Otherwise, people will struggle and they won't sign up. Send reminder emails. There we go. 1 week before and another on the day of the presentation. And just look at this interesting statistic. Sending it on the day of the event may increase attendance by 20%. Schedule your webinar in the late morning. That way participants won't have issues with commuting during rush hour. Okay, and have your webinar midweek. Studies show webinars on Tuesdays get the most attention. And I wouldn't be a true librarian if I didn't give you my sources. And guess what? Where I got most of my information. Webinars for Dummies. Ha ha ha. See, it's not that difficult. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So thank you. So what are the questions you'd like to ask?
And I was having a little giggle there about scheduling something in the morning, because it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Guys, if you can pop some comments in the chat. I personally don't find webinars daunting. You are sitting in your office speaking to yourself, not in front of an audience. I mean, you don't see the audience. unless the video camera is on. But we often get a lot of signups, as Teresa says. 65 signups, and there are 10 people online. So the recording will go out to those 65 to everyone. But it's a difficult challenge. It really depends on the topic, and this is obviously doing a webinar is obviously a hot topic. It's as Carmen says, practice, and preparing. Yes, that is Jeremiah. You're right. Yes, but I don't. I'm sorry. This is going to sound so flippant. I talk to myself quite often. So, but you do get used to it. As Carmen says. I mean, having a script is important. You know, that script to match the slides. That's been my modus operandi. Is to have a script. Challenges that we have are around the platform. I mean, we know that there were some pockets of silence on this. Other times, Big Blue Buttons had its challenges. I mean, we're using Adobe Connect here at UCT because it's a fairly stable platform, and easily. Well, for those who you just need the URL to be able for the meeting room to be able to get in. I don't know, Carmen. Teresa, can I? Does
I think that's it.
Does anyone else want to speak? I shall give people.
What I can just say, like I said, practice. Because let me tell you, the first time I presented this was to the Free State in a room full of people beginning of last year. Okay. The second presentation was literally online webinar was to KwaZulu-Natal November last year. So this is my second official online presentation, and you get better with practice.
Okay, so
David asks, is it advisable to have a second presenter monitoring the chat? You could, remember we said maybe have a backup in place, David. Listening to the same voice the whole time might get a bit boring. So yeah, have a backup.
It's also what's quite useful if there's somebody sort of monitoring the techie side of things, so that pretty much as I've been doing in the chat to say yes, sound issue or sort of troubleshooting, that the presenter is not distracted.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I see Baroness has said, I think this is great because it is convenient. It certainly is a convenient way. It's certainly for HELIG National, as David and Teresa would be able to say. It's the one way that we are able to provide a program that can reach across the country.
Yeah, it makes it accessible for all.
Most of us have the technology in our institutions. Most of us. And this is where the recording the recording will be shared with people who weren't able to join us. The other 50 odd people who didn't join in. But that is, as Teresa was saying earlier on, that is something a challenge that we contend with. Sometimes you have about 120 people sign up for a webinar, and then only 30 pitch on the day. Okay, yeah, David, certainly on this one, these webinar platforms, it may well be what in fact happens with the slides on this is they or perhaps on the UCT Adobe Connect, or well, on Adobe Connect, and this does happen on Big Blue Button as well. It converts the slides to PDFs. Baroness,
okay, I saw Google Hangouts at least says.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I see with Google Hangouts it says you can upload a PowerPoint, but I do know sometimes on the other platforms it said conversion from PowerPoint to PDF.
Yeah, that would be interesting to play around on Google Hangouts and see if that is the case. I'm sorry that no one from HELIG is here on this webinar, because perhaps they would be able to answer. But maybe Jeremiah has an answer. I see he's about to type. Berenice, I think we need to take you up on that. Perhaps one not necessarily aimed at HELIG, but a good general one for LIASA itself. So think about it. And we can chat offline. I must say I use webinars all the time, and particularly those ones from the States where I am not sitting at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night for what is a very useful webinar, but to get the recording to listen at my leisure. So I mean, I think it's a tool that we can use. All right. Are there any more comments or questions? I see Berenice was typing. If you've got a mic, Berenice, you can probably speak.
See, Teresa's also got a comment coming.
Okay, yes, you're at the launch yes, we will. The launch is the South African Library Week launch, which happens at the Centre for the Book on Monday. So perhaps, Berenice, we can talk then about, together with Anna Marie and some of the LIASA Exco, that we can talk about a webinar. And I see Teresa is typing as well. Teresa, you do have a mic. I have given you an access to the mic. All right. Carmen, thank you very, 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 very much for this. Hopefully, I can see that Berenice has been. I can see Berenice has been inspired to volunteer to do a webinar. If any of you any other participants are keen to do a webinar, you've got conduct an online discussion with colleagues on a particular topic, please contact Teresa Mofana to start setting up a webinar. It's online discussion on a particular topic. What sort of something that you might feel angst about in higher education. Please join, please contact her, and we can actually we can then get a webinar set up where we can invite people to other colleagues to join in. All right, Carmen, once again, thank you. Hopefully you've inspired a few people. You've definitely inspired Berenice. Okay, and Jeremiah, yes, Digital Scholarship Webinar. Jeremiah is a colleague who's sitting upstairs, and I will also remind him of this. But yes, we would like ideally to have a webinar a month, some sort of online discussion besides the Journal Online Club, which if you have if you found a good article that you would like to discuss, please also contact Teresa, and we can set that up as well. Okay, to set that up too. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, participants. We'll send out the recording link shortly, and have a happy South African Library Week. And those who are members, I hope you get the goodie bags, because they look quite cool. Yeah, they really look quite cool. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much. I am going to stop the